Merchant Capital joins me. We'll talk banking in a minute, but I just need to we're looking at better. The Bank of England has taken recession out of its forecast. The EU has now, as you see, or the EZ has now increased its growth. I mean, are we out of the woods and off to the races?
Listen, I think the economy is doing fairly well, particularly in the U.S., and I think Europe follows that. I think, from a inflation that was raging and got above 9%, it's now just under 5%. My sense is that the Fed's going to pause here, Richard. They're going to watch for a while, see what the data's like, and I think by the end of the year, inflation will be down to between 3 and 4%. So I think we're in a period of maybe a longer economic correction, but somewhat shallow.
On banking, so let's talk banking. We've had 2 or 3 resolutions. Their feeling is that it's contained at the moment, even as rates go higher, which of course puts greater pressure. If they're pausing, that allows the banks breathing room to recapitalize or at least sort it out. Are you optimistic?
I'm kind of balanced. I think we really need resolution around some kind of legislation on the deposit insurance level. I don't think $250,000 is enough. I think it should be something more like $5 million. I think this is incredibly, incredibly important, not just to individuals, but more importantly to small businesses. And if you're a small business in Des Moines, you're counting on your local or community or regional bank for all kinds of services around payroll, inventory financing. It's interestingly, it's an incredibly important part of our economic growth and job creation in the U.S. and why we continue to outperform. By having these community and regional banks, we actually have a deeper, more liquid capital market, and it really serves that sector very well.
But I hear your argument, 5 million. But let's say you go to 5 million. Yep. There's still got to be, for deposit insurance not to be bail out everybody, at some point you've got to say someone doesn't get made whole.
Well, I'd say a couple things. Right now, the Fed and the Treasury have basically implied that all deposits are safe. Let's make it explicit up to a certain level, which is more representative of the kinds of businesses and individuals that need that. To some extent, banks have already become more closer to government, more like utilities since 2008. So I don't think this is breaking new ground. We've already increased FDI insurance since 2008 once. And I think for legislation in this space, it's not really up to a small business in Des Moines, using that example again, to do enough research on the capital structure of their bank. That's up to the equity analysts. And the equity investors are at risk. The unsecured creditors are at risk. The management teams are at risk. The brand and reputation is at risk. I don't think the depositors up to a certain level should be bearing the brunt of that.
Would you, if you were the CEO at Chase, would you have done the First Republic deal?
Absolutely. I think it's a very good deal for J.P. Morgan. I think what you want to consider is this isn't a negative statement about J.P. Morgan. It's a very, very strong bank, and it was a good deal for them. But they're now 10% of the deposits in the U.S. And do we want to move to a system with 3 or 4 mega banks where they just don't have the business model because of the capital levels and the cost structure? Do they have a business model to be the best at serving small businesses around the country or specialist businesses around the country? I'll go back to my first point, Richard. This is a great, great opportunity for the U.S. to recognize that having not just a couple of mega banks, but having thousands of regional and community banks, it's really about job creation and economic growth. And I think it serves a sector of our business community very well.
Oh, but hang on a second. For those of us that went through, as you did, the savings and loan crisis back in the 80s and 90s, and then you had 13,000 or 20,000 banks, which was considered to be
14,000 is the number I remember, right?
Right,
about
which was
4,000 today.
To be too many. What is the correct number of banks? I mean, I'm not asking for a number per se, but what is it? If it's 4,000, 2,000, when is too many, too few?
So my answer to that would be, let's look at the core issue here, which is we clearly have an issue around FDI insurance. And if we can come to an agreement on a higher level of FDI insurance, not implied, but explicit, then let the market work. And I think only then will you get people coming in with equity into the banking system writ large, into regional banks and community banks. And I think whether there's consolidation and that moves to 2,000 or 3,000 or 1,000, we'll see with the market. But I think first, before you see equity coming into the market, we need to have some kind of a policy response to what we've seen happen over the last couple of months. And that's simply stated, a higher level of FDI insurance.
Bob, it's always good to see you. So grateful to be with us today.
Good to
Thank
see you,
sir.
Richard.